I'm Ian, and today we're going to talk with you about bringing your Kubernetes to the cloud with Anthos. But before we go into that, we'd like to introduce ourselves. I'm Ian Chakeres, and I'm one of the engineering leads working on Anthos and GKE. And my team is focused on making it possible to manage and monitor all your Kubernetes infrastructure, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem. I've been working with Kubernetes for several years now, and I've lived through a few of these different tech transitions. For example, from bare metal to containers, as well as from monoliths to microservices. And the thing that brings excitement to me is actually the velocity that you can achieve from these modern technologies, and by allowing you to focus on your business. Matt?
Okay, I'm Matt DeLio. I'm one of the product managers working on Anthos and GKE. I've been on the team for the past 3 years, initially focusing on some of our more infrastructure pieces of Kubernetes, but now I'm focused on making it easier to manage workloads and clusters running anywhere.
Hi everyone, I'm Abdelrazik. I'm a product manager for the Anthos team. I focus on GKE on-prem, and I've been working in this space for many years, working on Kubernetes, Anthos, where I've also been a customer for many, many years, which helps me kind of understand where all of you guys are coming from. So yeah, thank you for coming. And we have an exciting program for you, so I'm gonna let kind of Matt.
Sure, all right. Thank you. So here's our agenda for the next 30 minutes. We're going to start out by exploring the problem space a little bit more and the challenges you're facing. Next, we're going to look into how Anthos is uniquely positioned to help you address these challenges. And then finally, we're going to have a deep dive on one of the solutions we're providing in Anthos for observability and management. So let's get started. I wanted to spend a few minutes really looking at the challenges, kind of recapping a little bit of what Aparna said about the challenges that you're facing and how containers, Kubernetes, and ultimately Anthos can help you address these challenges. So as Aparna mentioned a few moments ago, companies are leaning more and more on your IT organization to deliver solutions that help them adapt quickly to changes in the market, consumer demand, and also to create competitive advantage. In addition, and we'll explore this later, you're being asked to run these solutions in multitudes of environments, both in cloud and on premises, all while maintaining your initial focus, which is reducing risk and cost. This is a tough challenge, but it's not impossible. Containerization can help your developers and operators be more productive, and Kubernetes, coupled with Anthos, can help you run efficiently wherever you need to be running. So as you probably know, containers are a necessary building block. That's why we're all here in San Diego this week, for sure. But they are really important to make your teams more agile. In a nutshell, containers are easier to manage than traditional solutions, be it bare metal or VM-based. For example, when you need to make a change to a production application, there's no need to patch a binary on a VM or a machine. Just toss out the old container and replace it with a new one. When operating containers, there's less infrastructure to manage, patch, and otherwise maintain. Another major benefit is that containers give you reproducible and consistent artifacts throughout your dev, test, and production deployment stages. This makes it far easier and faster to develop and debug your workloads. The net result is that developers and operators can focus more on the development instead of managing and patching infrastructure. But, and you may be thinking to yourself, containers by themselves are not enough. You need tooling to manage and run these container-based applications. Kubernetes is that tooling. Now, one of the key features of Kubernetes is that it provides an abstraction from the underlying infrastructure. This is particularly useful given the challenges and goals we've discussed up till now. With Kubernetes, your developers and service operators can learn a common set of tooling, APIs, et cetera, and apply them anywhere Kubernetes runs. So now that we know that containers and Kubernetes help us run workloads anywhere, why would we need to? Here are some of the top hybrid and multi-cloud use cases you've told us about. The first one on the top left here is invoking legacy dependencies. While you can move certain workloads to cloud, there will always be some on-premises services that either have not or cannot be moved to cloud. In the middle on the top is service availability. We hear all the time that in order to achieve your particular latency and availability requirements, you need to deploy your application across multiple regions and serve traffic to them. Another one we hear a lot, especially in the multi-cloud context, is developer choice. It's important to give your teams access to the preferred managed services, which will reduce their friction and help them move a lot more quickly. And that brings us to data locality and regulation on the bottom left there. Regulatory requirements often come up where you're required to keep your data and compute in specific regions throughout the world. This can be on premises, it could be in multiple clouds, it could be anywhere. Another one that's kind of emerging, at the bottom, the last two are sort of emerging, but local execution comes up a lot, whereas providing mission-critical applications to local, often on-premises environments. The examples we have here are warehouses, branches, even factories. And you want to do this in a way that allows you to build, manage, and maintain these applications using modern tooling driven from cloud. And finally, in the bottom right, we've got edge computing. It's very similar to local execution, but it's more constrained. You've got more remote connectivity problems, and you've got non-traditional compute environments. So we saw how adopting containers and Kubernetes help improve velocity and increase portability. We saw many reasons why you would want to run workloads anywhere. But now, how do you do this efficiently and effectively across all of these different environments? And that's why we built Anthos. It's a software stack that uses Kubernetes as its foundation and provides, through additional layers, which Amr will show us in a minute, consistency, security, and management capabilities, which in turn accelerates your developer velocity. To tell you more about Anthos and how it does this, I'll now turn it over to Amr.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure.
So we're going to cover a little bit of can you guys hear me okay? Okay, thank you. So we're going to cover a little bit of an overview. Upon I cover some of that, so we're going to walk through some of these quickly. But again, the idea is you look at Anthos as the software stack that enables you to do the operations, the management, and of course, all your apps. So, and this is we're going to talk about in this talk, a little bit focus on the infrastructure and also the managed operation. So upon I cover this, we are talking about how Anthos is a software-based stack built in open software and abstracting the infrastructure way. But when you look at Anthos deployment option, I think that's kind of where we really differentiate is we've looked at all of where a lot of our customers are, and the reality is you customers are running things everywhere, from Google Cloud Platforms, from vSphere, from some of the other cloud providers, bare metal, or even some of you have your own kind of Kubernetes cluster. And this was taken in consideration as we were building Anthos and how it can fit and actually help you run across all of these environments. So kind of coming to you as a customer where you are instead of trying to bring you and force you to a specific place where you want to run. So when I look at the components of Anthos and how it fits, this is how, at least how I like to mentally think about it. So the first box on the bottom, you have Anthos Migrate. And you can bring new applications to Anthos, kind of have some kind of greenfield, but also, as Aparna mentioned, there is a lot of existing applications that you have to accommodate to. You would love to migrate, you have to use some of those capabilities. So Migrate, which we went to GA, I think this week or last week, helps you a lot with that. The next part, okay, I have my app, I want to run it somewhere. Where do I run it? And this is where we give you some options. Okay. This is where we try to give you some options, again, between GKE on the cloud, between Anthos GKE deployed on bare metal, and between Anthos GKE deployed on some of the other cloud providers. So the next part is, okay, I got all of these clusters, I want to manage them together. What do I do? And this is where Hub and Connect, which we're going to talk about, even Ian is going to talk about more in detail, comes in. I say, okay, how can I have this visibility and centralized visibility across all of these clusters and manage my applications? So, okay, I got my clusters up and running, I got my applications up and running, I can see them all, what do I do next? Okay, you might want to make sure that all of these clusters are configured correctly and to the same standard you have in the enterprise. And this is where Anthos config management comes in, making sure that all your clusters are consistent, making sure that all the configuration are consistent across any cloud provider. So you got your clusters up and running, you got your applications up and running, everything is okay. Okay, now when I got this second level of visibility into how my applications are run. I want to get this deep dive into kind of my SLO, my performance, and this is where Anthos Service Mesh comes in. So Anthos Service Mesh adds this additional layer of visibility, adds this additional layer of control on the infrastructure layer by using Istio to give you that almost like X-ray-like visibility across all of your apps to see exactly where is the latency, which apps are talking to each other, which ones are affecting the performance of your application, which is specifically critical as you move to microservices. Okay, so you got your service mesh now. Okay, what do I do? Okay, let's get more application, and this is where capabilities such as Cloud Run, GCP Marketplace comes in, and more applications are going to be running from Google and some other partners to help you run all of these applications. So as you look at this, this actually helps you. This helps you look at your application infrastructure, where you are in the journey, and get with you and introduce the existing component, whatever component you need to manage where you are in your journey. So focusing a little bit about Anthos GKE. So GKE is kind of the foundation of a lot of this. GKE, of course, Anthos GKE is our Kubernetes distribution. It runs the first iteration of that, as I mentioned 5 years ago, came in live on GCP, and it's one of the most widely kind of regarded, widely respected kind of Kubernetes platform. But the idea is you don't have to think about a lot of these technologies. This is like production-grade applications. You get access to other services. You can easily start, easy upgrade, all of these things that shouldn't take you a lot of time because you want to make sure that you are focusing on your business and focusing on your application. But then this comes in kind of Anthos GKE on-prem, which is you got a turnkey production-grade conformant Kubernetes. You got running, get the best practices. You got access to container services on GCP. Again, easy upgrade path. A lot of the capabilities that you want to get from the cloud, a lot of customers came to us and say, hey, I would love to have this running on my infrastructure. I have this existing SAP applications. I have this existing other applications that I cannot move. And I need this, all of these capabilities and all the experience that I'm used to on the cloud. So this is where Anthos GKE on-prem kind of comes in. So yeah, so the next part of that is we're going to talk about, I'm going to hand it over to Ian, is to talk about that layer of observability and the layer of management across, and having this visibility across these applications. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ian.
I'm pretty lucky with the microphones today. So Matt has given a bit of an overview for why customers are coming to Anthos and what you can get from Anthos, and then Amr did a bit of a deep dive into several of the components. And I'm going to really dive deeper into the technology and the multi-cluster observability and management features. So I'm going to start by talking about connecting your clusters to Google with their single pane of glass, and I'll then give some demos. So just to start with some of the terminology here, you've got Kubernetes clusters. They can be on GCP, they can be on-prem, they can be on other clouds. And the first step is to register those clusters with Google's control plane and the GKE hub. Those clusters get connected to GCP by installing a Connect agent, and then you can log in and interact and view the workloads in those clusters. So we have an amazing UI for GKE, and we've extended that to Kubernetes clusters anywhere. With this single pane of glass, you can interact with all your GKE clusters as well as GKE on-prem clusters, which are actually connected when they are created. Via this single pane of glass, you can monitor and manage your workloads no matter where they are. You can dig into the cluster resources and actually see what the version of the cluster is, how many nodes are in that cluster, what the CPU and memory are. You can actually view and inspect all the different workloads that are running in there and whether they are healthy or whether they might have a problem. The GKE UI also provides additional context and surfaces relevant information. For example, if there is an error or if there is a problem, it'll raise those alerts or warnings and make them really easy and actionable. And if you have sufficient permissions, you can also manipulate resources directly from the UI. For example, scaling up a deployment or changing the version of an application. So the Cloud Console really provides a consistent UI for your operators and your developers across clouds and across clusters. Now I'm going to talk about how you connect your clusters to Google. To connect your clusters, you run an agent that runs in your cluster and connects to Google. Looking at the diagram here, in the bottom right-hand side, this is your infrastructure and this is your Kubernetes clusters. And on the top, this is GCP and Google Cloud. And so you can see we've got a few different keys and locks here. These relate to different security operations that are happening. I'm going to first talk about installing the agent. So you see there's a lock and a key with the GCP Cloud logo. Actually, you install that agent and you use GCP service account for the authentication and authorization, and an encrypted connection gets formed to Google from that agent, connecting your cluster to Google. If for any reason the agent gets disconnected, it will periodically attempt to reconnect. When you visit the Cloud Console after you've connected a cluster, this is in the upper left-hand corner there, you can see there's a little key and the Kubernetes icon. This is actually you logging in as you, and in the bottom left is the API server with the lock, and this is where role-based access controls that are set by you and your administrators come into play. So actually, depending on what your privileges are when you log in, you can do different things from the Cloud Console. And administrators can essentially scope permissions to least privilege to ensure that you can only do the things that you need to be able to do in that cluster. Now that I've told you about how to securely log into your clusters and interact with them, we're going to go ahead and move over to the demos. So in the first demo, I'm going to talk about deploying the Connect agent and registering your cluster, then logging in and show you a little bit about the Cloud Console. So I have a Kubernetes cluster here. It's just a single node kind cluster, which is Kubernetes and Docker, and it's 115. You can see I have the cluster there. It has a small number of pods running and a few deployments. Now if we go to the Cloud Console here, you can see we have a number of different Kubernetes clusters already in this project. We've got GK clusters as well as clusters from other clouds, and we are going to register this cluster and then log in and interact with it. So hitting the register button, I'm just going to call it my cluster. And we are here in San Diego, and it's a Kubernetes and Docker cluster. And I'm going to go ahead and generate the registration command. So what you can see in the bottom there is actually certain things are waiting to happen. And there's a particular command here that takes information about the cluster so that it can deploy the agent, for example, the cluster config and the kubeconfig path, as well as a local key file. That local key file is the GCP service account that I talked about for connecting the agent back to cloud. So you can see here I have the GCP service account right here. I'm just going to go ahead. I already have a command here with all that information. So what this command is going to do is actually install the agent and form the connection back to Google. And what we should see is after a few moments, the related agent will get deployed in the cluster, and we'll see updates here in the background. Let's see. So now it's deployed the agent. Now let's hope we see the 2 green dots. So now what this means is now the cluster has registered and gotten connected to Google. Now you can set some more labels, but I'm just going to go ahead and skip adding more labels to it. And now what you can see is that in addition to the other clusters that I had, I now have my cluster. Now as I mentioned, once you've registered your cluster, you actually have to log in, and you have to log in with your credentials. So for this demo, I've actually set up a Kubernetes service account granting me cluster admin, just so I can do all the different types of operations that I want within this cluster. So I'm going to paste the key to go ahead and log in. And now you can see I've got the green dot, I've got my clusters, and now I also have, it's showing me the cluster size, the CPU, and the memory. And we can actually dive in deeper and see what's going on in that cluster. You can see things like the master version, as well as the CPU and memory, and you can see the nodes as well. So there's only one node in this, as we showed here. So we can see that node, and we can see the different pods as well that are running. So let's go ahead. Now we've connected this cluster. I mentioned that we had given permission to actually deploy workloads into this cluster. So let's go ahead. We're going to deploy an application really quickly. So I'm just going to use a hello world container here. And I'm going to put it in, I'm going to call it hello world. And actually, I'm going to deploy it into that cluster that I just created. So now what this is doing is actually, it's going through the connection and actually deploying this particular application. So what we should see is it'll declare the intent on the API server, and then the API server is going to reconcile that intent by creating the deployment and spinning up all the pods. So you can see there, it's now created the hello world deployment, and we can see that everything is green. And actually, we'll just hop over here into the cluster and look at the deployments as well. So there we are. There's the hello world deployment 3 and 3. So in this demo, I showed you how to deploy the Connect agent and get your cluster connected to the cloud, how to log in, and then how to interact with that cluster via the UI. Now I'm going to move on to the second part of the demo. So I'm going to talk about monitoring, debugging, and performing some updates. And so this is going to show you how the Cloud Console really surfaces information, helps you debug and troubleshoot, how with the appropriate permissions you can actually make changes and resolve them, as well as some of the other common operations that you encounter. So we're going to start here. We'll start on the workloads page. And what you can see is you can see there's a problem here. And actually, let's just filter it down. And so you can see there's a problem with this one deployment here. It says does not meet minimum availability. So let's go ahead and dive into that particular deployment. Now, right off the bat, you can see that it's surfacing the errors to me. It's saying there's an image pull back off error, and I can actually click on that and see specifically what's going on. And as you can see here, if it's kind of small, it looks like somebody made a typo. And so we actually, this particular image isn't available. And so you can also see that we want to have one of these pods running, but it's not successful. So let's go ahead. We see that there's a typo, so we'll go in here and edit, and we're just going to fix that particular error. Now we're going to save the changes, and what this is going to do is change the image that is related to this particular deployment, and you can see that it starts taking action immediately. So now we've resolved this particular issue, the typo, the image was pulled successfully, the deployment is green, and the related pods are also available. So this is fantastic. We had a problem, it surfaced to us in the UI immediately, and we were able to resolve it quickly. Now we know that later today, there's going to be a lot of traffic load for this particular application. So let's go through a few of the common scenarios there. The first thing we'd like to do is we only have one replica, which doesn't really give us much redundancy or much scale. So the first thing let's do is let's go ahead and scale this application up. So we're just going to give it, let's give it 5 replicas. Now what's going to happen when I click this button is actually it's going to say, instead of just 1 pod for this deployment, I want 5 pods for this deployment, and then it's going to spin up all those pods. Now we'll likely catch it here when it's starting up. So you can see we wanted 5, and it started creating the other ones. Let's hit refresh. All right, so now we've got 5 replicas running. of hello world, and we can see that all the pods associated with this are running. Now this is great. Via the UI, a few clicks, we just scaled up our application. But you know how it is, like as soon as you think you're all set, there's a problem or there's some new feature you want to roll out. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to roll out an update to this particular deployment. So I'm just going to leave 3 seconds in between as the different pods spin up, and we're going to move it from 1.0 to 2.0. And so what should happen here is at no time should we have less than 5 pods running. And actually what it's going to do is it's going to roll the updates. So it'll spin up a 2.0 pod and shut down a 1.0 pod, and then spin up another 2.0 and shut down a 1.0, so that we always have at least 5 replicas running at any one point of time. So we're rolling out the updates, and you see that actually we had those 5 running, and we start getting some more running, because we're kind of seeing this rolling state as some spin up and some shut down from the old version, 1.0, to the new version. So you can see we've now got, the deployment is gone, but some of the pods are still running. It's going to take another few more seconds before the old pods get shut down. Some of them are starting to shut down there. All right, so now we've done the update. This particular deployment has 5 of the new pods running, and we've updated the application. So that's the second demo, and now we're going to switch back to the slides. Can you switch us back to the slides, please? Thank you. All right, so Matt talked a bit about the velocity as well as where people have their infrastructure and need to be running. And then Amr dug into Anthos and really an overview of many of the different components. And then I went through and actually showed you a demo about connecting your clusters to Google as well as interacting with them. So that's really the end of the talk, and we want to open it up now for questions, as well as invite you to come talk to us either after this talk as well as at the reception this evening. We do have people here all week as well at KubeCon, in the community lounge, as well as in the booth. So thank you, everyone.